it got to the point where my skin was like raw. I couldn't move. I was barely eating anything. I don't know how like graphic you want me to get.
Welcome to Are You Listening? I'm Kitty, and this is my podcast where I talk to different people about completely different life experiences and stories in order to understand each other better. The question is, are you listening? This episode is not only special because it's episode 1, but it's also because I'm speaking to the lovely Alex, who's a classmate of mine, and she's very open and very articulate and very insightful about her experience with chronic illness, which is something that affects a lot of young people in the UK, which I didn't know. So it was a really interesting conversation, and I hope you guys enjoy. We're in our second year of uni now, and she kind of went missing for semester 1. We're now in semester 2, and she's back. So Alex suffered from chronic illness, which by definition is when you are ill for more than 3 months. So hi, Alex.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining. So why don't you give us a little bit of context around like when you fell ill, basically?
So it was essentially, it's quite an easy one to remember. It was last year from January. It started very, very small. It wasn't something I actually was diagnosed with before. I didn't know I had it. When I was little, I had a lot of eczema, grew up having eczema. I think a lot of people do though. And you just do the usual, you're prescribed different steroid creams and you apply it and then it's gone and you're fine, you forget about it. But in January, it started being quite persistent, just kind of around my face, which obviously really knocks down your confidence. So I started to not really go to classes often then, but again, I just hopped onto the steroid creams and it got better. So I didn't worry about it too much. Then it started progressing. It was kind of all over my body at that point. And it got to the point where I couldn't really even move. But again, I was prescribed stronger steroid creams. It got better. Went back to uni, it was fine. It was never really a prolonged break to the point where my education was at risk or anything like that. No one ever said anything at uni. It was fine. I wasn't missing too much. And then actually the start of second year, so term 1, it got to the point where my skin was like raw and it was terrible. I couldn't move. I was barely eating anything because I didn't want to flare it. And I was diagnosed with topical steroid withdrawal, which is a very complicated condition, so I won't go too much into like explaining it, but essentially my skin was not able to heal itself and I needed to do a lot of work in terms of like my diet, everything to try and just like support it. I was at a point where I couldn't really move. I was stuck in bed. I literally like couldn't move my limbs. So going to university was not an option, but I didn't want to feel like this is going to be me forever, if that makes sense. So I didn't want to admit defeat, and I felt like taking a year out was admitting defeat. And I thought, no, let me push this. I can pursue university at home. Let me email them and see what my options are. And yeah, I tried to stay strong, tried to stay hopeful. I wanted to go back, and so I didn't want to take a year out, essentially.
Yeah. When did you kind of realise that this condition went from, okay, this is painful and it's inconvenient, to this looks like it's going to be my reality for the next few months at least?
Yeah, so actually it's funny that you asked this because beforehand, obviously I would use the steroid creams. It'd be gone in like a week. It was honestly not even noticeable that I was absent because it'd be like a day or two and then I'd come back. But this time round, I used the cream. It didn't work. It actually burned. It hurt even more. And that's when I started realising after a week that I'm not getting any better. It's getting worse. I woke up every morning and I'd be terrified to look in the mirror because I could just see progressively how much worse it was getting. So I think at that point you kind of start to realise, shit, I'm in this for the long haul now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that sounds really scary. So you're at home at this point. So you're living with your parents, your mum?
Yes, yeah. So I mean, second year I went to live at home anyway because we live in London, the outskirts of London.
Okay.
So I was really lucky to be looked after by my mum. My partner was also looking after me.
Yeah.
But obviously, you know, they had work, they had their lives. I was alone at home for quite a lot of it. And the feeling of having a chronic condition is quite lonely in the first place.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was given some counselling on the NHS, so that was really helpful. Okay. But that was in the later half of the condition, just because obviously the waiting times.
Yeah.
But it was a very lonely experience, mental health-wise and physical health-wise as well. Especially the kind of not recognising yourself. I think as a woman, we tie a lot to our appearance. I think as men as well, like in society, appearance is very important. I think you don't realise how much you value your own appearance until something goes wrong and you're looking at yourself in a mirror and you don't recognise yourself anymore. It's terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. And also when you're so young, so like a lot of your worth is kind of tied to like these social interactions that you'll have, or your appearance. Yeah. So it must have been like quite isolating.
Yeah, and also just, I didn't want to, even when I began to recover and, you know, I could still move, I didn't want to go into uni because I didn't want to be judged. Like, you could very clearly tell I was not okay. Like, my face was very puffy, very red, very scaly. I kept describing myself as like a monster. And it's so sad. You have to practice really kind language towards yourself when you're in the midst of this. But it's hard. It's really hard to keep doing that.
Yeah. What was an average day in your life when you're at home? So, you know, maybe your partner, your mum, they're not in the house.
So, well, whoever was in the morning would make me some kind of breakfast. I'd eat very, very plain food. So usually cooked vegetables or like fruit. But even fruit, I began to kind of get scared of. It was more of a psychological, like, I'm scared of this food because I think it's going to make it worse. And that whole aspect of it was terrible. But yeah, so I'd have something like that for breakfast. I couldn't prepare it, so someone would have to prepare it for me. Then I'd have like a Dead Sea salt bath because it's really good for the condition and to like support healing. But getting into the water itself was painful. So someone would help me get into the bath. I honestly felt like a child, like I felt like a toddler. It was really kind of, I don't know, it was, I remember having like out of body experiences where I'd see like my partner helping me into the bathtub and like, I'd be like, I'm literally 20 years old. This feels wrong. Like, I feel like I'm like really old and like dying and like, what is happening to me? What is happening to my body that I thought was healthy? And so, yeah, I'd have baths quite frequently with the Dead Sea salts to try and help myself. And then I'd literally just sit on the sofa. I couldn't read because I couldn't focus. I couldn't even flip the pages of a book.
Yeah, for those listening, I must say, Alex is never without a book. Every time that she posts a story of whatever she's reading, or like a page of a book, I'm always zooming in to see like what it's about. And it's always something really interesting. So yeah, that must have been like, I mean, it's just a transition into like total dependence.
Yeah, I mean, my screen time was sky high too.
Yeah, mine is anyway.
Yeah, but I couldn't even go into work, obviously. So I'm a bookseller on the weekends. Couldn't do that. Luckily, you know, like I had a letter from a doctor and they were very understanding about it, but it was hard not seeing anyone. All I saw was like my TV screen. I was watching like Love is Blind and just like actual trash on TV just to try and get me through it. But at that moment, that's all I needed. I needed distraction because if I didn't have that, I'd keep focusing on my arms and my face and how terrible I looked and how everything hurt so much and how I couldn't move my limbs. And it was good to have that distraction. And honestly, I'm thankful for my TV screen at that time.
yeah, I bet. Did you have any idea of the longevity at that point? Were you like, is this going to go on forever? Is it what treatments were you taking at that time?
So at the time, I literally had no treatments. I was awaiting a dermatologist, which the waiting times are notoriously very long in the UK. Private wasn't an option for me. I saved up my money and went privately once to try and get a diagnosis because then you can translate it to the NHS and they can kind of take over from there. They prescribed me something called Protopic, which is like a topical immunosuppressant, very, very hardcore, less hardcore than the actual pill though. And then I finally got to the dermatologist and they gave me the actual pill immunosuppressant. So I'm on something called cyclosporin. I can only be on that for 6 months. But as soon as I started taking that, it got better. But I knew until I started taking it, I would be in the same position. There was nothing I could do. Yeah. It just progressively got worse every time. So, yeah, eventually I got on that like the end of October.
Okay.
And then it started to get better. but I do have to come off it soon. So I'm worried about what's going to happen then, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say about how the people around you were towards you, and what was helpful, what was not helpful at that time? Did you have people that were maybe not saying or doing quite the right things, even if they had good intentions? What's your experience with kind of how people should go about helping people suffering from a chronic illness?
Well, I think because obviously there's so many different chronic illnesses, but I think in terms of, I guess, any skin condition, really, commenting on the look of the skin is never going to help.
Yeah.
You're very aware. You're always looking at yourself in the mirror. You don't need someone commenting on it. But on top of that, I guess my mum would do this a lot, and I know it came from a good place, but she would suggest, like, you should only eat, like, cooked carrots. You should eat this. Like, I've researched this, like, do this and avoid this. We need to, like, get all cotton bed sheets, or, like, this is better. This is better. And there was just so many swaps I was doing. I felt like my life was becoming smaller and smaller, and I was almost like imprisoned in this, like, I can't eat anything, I can't do this, I can't do that. And I've have previous issues with, like, eating disorders. So my mind was just going all over the place.
Yeah.
And being told, like, don't do this, but do that, and having so much control imposed. And none of these things helped, because at the end of the day, it's a chronic condition. But being told all these things, and people saying, even on social media, like, take like a shot of apple cider vinegar in the morning, it's going to really help your immune system and you're going to be fine. Hearing those things, and you just feel so helpless. You're like, am I not doing enough? Should I be doing a celery juice cleanse and blah, blah, blah? And yeah, those things aren't helpful.
Yeah, I'm sure, because also even just in life, there's so much, advice on what you should or shouldn't be eating and doing. So I imagine if you've got a condition on top of that, it can get really obsessive.
Yes. Yeah.
Just because it's so tied to your health.
Yeah.
What about good things that you're like, people should know that this is kind of the way to go about it?
Yes, I don't want to be too negative.
No, that's all right.
Good things, I would say, well, actually, it's quite good to find community in whatever you have. So whilst TikTok can be quite toxic at times, I think it was nice to see I'm not the only one going through this. I think when you're cooped up alone at home, you think, oh my God, the world is against me and no one else is going through this and I'm suffering so much. It's good to have community. But I will say with caution, because again, there's so much kind of fake, like, facts out there, and they'll try and tell you to do this and that. And I think just having someone to talk to, if you can access counselling, that is amazing. I was lucky enough that my counsellor went through the same thing, which is so crazy.
That's amazing.
What a coincidence.
Yeah.
But yeah, finding someone to talk to, even having my partner there was amazing. I mean, obviously, normally I'd just be with my parents in the house, but having him there, and just seeing someone that's, like, outside of my immediate family and being able to talk to someone like that, calling your friends as well.
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily FaceTiming, I didn't have the courage for that. But just being able to call your friends and still have that regular contact and not feel like you're completely left out. Because the FOMO gets real too. I mean, you see, like, your friends you see your friends at sports night and you're like, oh my God, I haven't been to a sports night in, like, a century at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just good to have that contact. Just make sure you keep an eye on your friends and you keep texting them, keep sending them stupid memes and TikToks and reels, and just make them laugh.
Yeah, treat the friendship like as normal.
Exactly.
And keep, I was actually going to ask about community, because there's a lot of people, like, even on YouTube, in the kind of, like, there's this big community of young people talking about their, like, chronic, pain, their chronic illnesses. And if you had access to, like, people like that, or, your therapist, that's, like, incredible to, like, have people that just know exactly what you're going through.
I would say, though, sometimes it's hard to kind of prescribe that as something that's useful, because you tend to get yourself into a bit of a hole, and you do feel like, I don't want to say you catastrophize what's going on, because obviously chronic illness is terrible, but I feel like on social media, you hear so many different stories and there's so many different stages of topical steroid withdrawal. You start to feel like, oh my God, I've got that stage, and you start to feel like it's worse than it is, and you start to feel worse about yourself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
It's obviously different for all chronic illnesses, but yeah, I started to kind of compare myself to those people and be like, oh my God, I'm at that position. They've been like this for 3 years. I've got 3 years of this now because they've got 3 years, and everyone is different. So it's really unhealthy to do that, obviously, and compare yourself. So that's why I say balance is important. My counsellor pointed it out. She was like, maybe it's time to get off TikTok.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, do you know what? Whilst I like the community aspect, I think it's getting too much.
Yeah, I mean, they do say, like, you know, if you do fall ill or someone close to you, like, don't spend hours on Google and don't spend,
Yeah, you're not a doctor.
Yeah.
Unless you are, but
yeah,
still, I wouldn't recommend
trust
it.
the experts. So that's what you did from October when you started getting your medication. Would you say that your mental health was at its worst before then? So we're talking like September times.
Yeah, I'd say start of October was probably the peak. I mean,
right.
I don't know how like graphic you want me to get about like so.
However.
Okay, well, there was one day on Saturday. I'll remember this day for the rest of my life. My mum was at work, dad was at work. I was home with the dog. Mm-hmm. And I decided, like, I feel like shit. I want to take a shower and I want to just wash my fucking hair. Yeah. Because I wasn't even able to do that. Like, my partner had to do that.
Yeah.
So, and I wasn't going anywhere, so I didn't even have to wash my hair. But you know the feeling, like, you just want to feel clean.
Yeah.
So I got in the shower. It hurt so much to wash my hair. So, and I start crying. I'm like, I can't fucking do anything for myself. I start bawling my eyes out in the shower. And then it gets to the point where I'm like, so miserable that I sit down on the shower floor, like full Trisha Paytas in the kitchen moment, and I'm like bawling my eyes out.
Yeah.
And just, it felt really good to release it. But I just remember feeling so low. And I think it's at the point where you're like questioning your like life's worth.
Yeah.
Where you're like, fuck, I need to like see someone, I need to speak to someone. This is not good.
Yeah.
But I just knew as soon as I got better, my mental health would get better. There was no other way around it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. But I mean, my counselor recommended things, you know, like try and not look in the mirror and try and spend quality time with your partner. So do activities, whatever you can, instead of just kind of like sitting there. Like if you feel a little bit better, try and even do like a puzzle or something, like have like a date in a way, you know, try and do things like that. But yeah, it got very, very low. And that was, I think, the lowest I've ever felt.
Yeah.
You just feel so incapable. As I said, I felt like a toddler. I felt like I couldn't do anything and I wasn't allowed to do anything because I had my mum kind of like hounding me and saying, don't eat this, don't do that. And yeah, it was not good.
And on top of that, you're still doing uni.
Yeah, so I was doing online lectures, watching live lectures, which was actually fine because obviously I was watching TV a lot. So I was just watching them online. But I wasn't taking notes. I wasn't able to do my essays for a while. So luckily I had extensions and things for those. Exams as well have been pushed back. But yeah, I was watching them online. So I felt like I was still kind of kept up to date with uni. But obviously I missed out on seminars, which are very important. And
I mean, that's really impressive. Still to watch the lectures, the amount of people so healthy, no lectures attended. So
yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I guess at that point it's kind of like you're grateful for them in a way.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'm just a
bit of
uni
normality.
student at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so now that you're kind of coming out the other side of it, here you are back in semester 2. How would you say like reinsertion has been for you?
So I'd say it's been mixed. I remember the first time I left the house, honestly, it's like a movie scene. Like you just feel so grateful for like a blade of grass.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, it's so green. The sky is so blue and the air is so fresh. But no, honestly, not to be dramatic, but it felt great.
Yeah.
And then when I started going to class, honestly, I was quite tired. I wasn't used to that schedule anymore.
Yeah.
But the medication's been great. It's been helping a lot. In terms of university, I wasn't really supported that much, to be honest. No one really asked, like, hey, are you back and are you okay?
Yeah.
But I had a lot of great friends around me, so everyone was checking up on me. Even people I, like, don't immediately call friends. Like, people just, like, in my seminars would be like, oh, I'm so glad you're back. Are you feeling okay? Like, what was going on?
Yeah.
It was nice. Like, people remembered. And
yeah, there were big rumours that you'd gone to UCL.
Really?
Well, because your boyfriend, George, right, he went to UCL.
Oh, my God.
Because we were preparing for a group seminar and we were put in a group with George and we were like, he's gone to UCL. Like, he's not going to be doing the group with us. So then, I don't know. It was like, oh yeah, they've both gone off to UCL together, like sailing off into the sunset.
Never do that.
No,
Fuck
never
man.
cheat on never cheat on kings.
No.
So back now, and so really grateful and like, you know, being back amongst us. I mean, it must feel weird though. Like, do you look back at that whole period like that was a fever dream, or is it like...
No, I mean, I've blocked out a lot of it.
Yeah.
I like kept a diary just because I thought this will be good and like quite grounding to look back
Yeah.
to. But no, I've blocked it out. It's basically like a trauma response, really.
Yeah,
Like, you just don't want to remember it. But coming back it's been nice. I think like I will never forget how low I felt, because I think now I feel so much more grateful for my health, and I tend to kind of appreciate myself day to day and speak to myself a bit nicer, because I recognized how important that was in that time. Yeah. So I think it's definitely taught me a lot, but I definitely wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy. Yeah,
I'm sure it also like massively builds resilience.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wouldn't call myself the most resilient person in the world because of it, but yeah, it's definitely helped. It was definitely a learning curve.
And now, are there lessons that you've learned looking back and you're like, yeah, that's something that I'm going to hold on to, you know, maybe not all the bad things and the trauma of it, but...
I think I was just quite surprised at how much I held within my appearance and how important I felt that was. I don't think I realised it until it kind of all went down. But yeah, I think I've just tried to detach myself a little bit from it and like love my body the way it is and just like nourish it with healthy food, but not go crazy. And like, I don't know, I think it's really taught me balance, because I had to be so pedantic about everything that it was ruining the joy of life. And yeah, I think, and also just take everything with a pinch of salt that you see on social media, for sure.
Yeah, I think also almost like having a health scare when you're so young. There's so much available to us, like when we're young, whereas like you get all sides of the spectrum. You get the kind of like gym, fitness, eating, be really careful, and then you get the whole kind of like drugs and drinking and glamorization of all of that. So it's kind of like, you know, that's neither of those are healthy. So.
Yeah, I think, well, obviously there's been that article out recently that I guess our generation isn't drinking as much and partying as much and clubs are shutting down. But yeah, I think in general, obviously I couldn't drink and I can't really on the medication I'm on, but it has definitely put a perspective of like, go out with your friends, but you don't have to go out clubbing just because everyone's going clubbing. You don't have to like put up with those pressures. Like, I think more people should admit like it's not that fucking fun. Like you're just stood there being pushed by people. It's not that fun.
When you were saying about not going to a sports night, I was like, for some reason I found it so fun last year. Because like first year I was like, oh my God, I love this. We've been to one or two and both times we've come back and been like, we're never going to that bar. Like we're never going to the student union bar again.
Like why are there so many people?
It's got 100 times. I live on so guys, if you don't know, DC is Dover Castle, which is the pub at King's College London. It's like the kind of the big pub that we all go to, and it's ridiculous. It's so packed. But yeah, you're not missing out on much.
No, I don't feel like I am. And do you know what? I've found other ways to hang out with my friends. We go to comedy shows and
we're going to a comedy show tonight.
Yeah. Oh really? They're so good. And sometimes they're shit, and that makes it even better.
Exactly. So oh my God, last week, because every week on Wednesday nights at our pub, like round the corner, we realised that they do comedy, and it was so uncomfortable. And it's a tiny room, and they keep talking to us and like trying to find out who we are and why we're there, and it's really uncomfortable and it's really awkward, but it's kind of funny.
And if you go with a good crowd, like good friends, it's so hilarious.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, I think...
This is like our frontal lobe development. We're like, guys, Wednesday night, guys bar, hell no. Go to a comedy club.
10 p.m, hell yeah. No, I don't want to be like branded as fucking boring, but I think, just the balance. Like you can go out like once in a while, but don't feel pressured to. And at the end of the day, I hate to say it, but you're not invincible. Just because you're like 20 years old and maybe you've never had a major health scare, which I think is a lot of people's experience, and you just think you're kind of immune to it all. You're not, unfortunately.
Well, that's the other thing, is because so chronic illness, like, although it is, you know, more prominent kind of the older you get, which is why it's, you know, really isolating if you get it so young, because it's like, why are you in bed all day when you're 20? It's like people don't like really get it. But, you know, it does actually happen to a lot of people. It's just, I feel like it's not really spoken about. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I think also just in terms of societal pressures, obviously, like, going out clubbing, especially as a university student, going out, drinking, going to all the different events and stuff. You can't do that when you have a chronic illness. There's so many things you can't do. So again, it's like your world is so small already. And those pressures feel even more intense because you feel like, oh my God, even if I wanted to, I can't do that. And there's nothing saying like, there's nothing saying that it's acceptable to just go, oh yeah, let's just, you know, hang out for dinner and then go to bed. Like no one wants to do that as a uni student. Yeah. So you feel like you're forced into going out with a chronic illness, which is just even more uncomfortable. And of course, it's just too much pressure. I think that people just put too much pressure on themselves.
100%. And there's a whole other pressure side, which is the going out, but also, you know, networking, career, internship.
Don't even get me started.
I mean, internship is a bit of a trigger word at uni because you say the word internship to anyone. No, I'm sorry, I'm so triggered. My whole life is being triggered by internship. So I just have to like, but yeah, no. And, you know, it's crazy. It's insane, the pressure that there is. And, you know.
No, I'm so glad you said that because obviously year 2 is the time where a lot of people apply to internships. And we've given everyone a scare, but so I was like looking at law ones and everything, and that was the time you're supposed to apply, term 1. But I was in a headspace where I thought, I don't know when I'm going to get better. I can't even turn up to a fucking interview if I get one. Yeah. So I applied to a couple. I didn't get them, and then I just could not physically push myself to do more because I just thought I'm not going to be able to do it.
And that's completely fair enough. You know, there are things that are way more important than all of that. You've got your health and you've got your mental health and all of that. If you don't have that, there's no point in, you know, looking for all of these crazy things.
I don't know if it's just our uni, but it's insane. People are doing crazy things for networking. I don't know if it's like a London uni thing or like, I've not heard it with other like home friends that go to other unis.
But I've had people like come up to me like asking for my LinkedIn on campus. I'm like, what? I mean, literally nothing about me is giving, you need to network with me. I'm in joggers. Like, this is really just going through the trash to find your LinkedIn.
Don't even get me started on LinkedIn. It's just the fakest platform ever.
Oh my God. But yeah, so again, like all of these pressures, and again, it's like this weird kind of FOMO or like where you literally just can't be a part of it for a while, which is almost like, in a way, it's like, you're focusing on what's important for once.
But you never think it is at this age. You never think it is. Yeah. You just think, you know, internships, going out, whatever. You might not even prioritise internships. You might have different priorities, but health is always last. Yeah. Because you think, well, I'm healthy, I'm 20, I'm fine. Yeah. But no.
I'm healthy, so I'm fine, to the point of just like getting unhealthy, like drinking, smoking, whatever it is. So yeah, it must put a lot of things into perspective.
To anyone listening, I just want to say, like, be kind to yourself. It's the most important thing when you're in the middle of it. Whether it's a chronic illness or just any illness, if you've got the flu and you're at home, if you have a cold and you're at home and you can't go to uni for a week, don't freak out over it. Yeah. I know there's a lot of people that obviously just like skip a week of uni and say they're ill and whatever. But genuinely, like, uni is supposed to be there to help you. Like, if you're going through something, reach out and say, listen, I'm at home for this week because I can't do this and this, or I've got this and this going on at home, personal issues. They should technically support you, and they should offer alternatives. And you're paying a lot of money, like, suck them dry, you know, ask for everything. Honestly, like, I think it really puts it into perspective because they have all this, like, society, they have like an equality and diversity team and disabilities team. And
they put quite a lot of emphasis on all of that. Yeah.
So use that. They're supposed to help you. They're not just there as like a performative team. Yeah. So I'd say, be kind to yourself and use all the resources available at the university. Even if you feel reluctant to, just give it a go. Like, even the counselling or anything that they offer, just give it a go.
If you guys made it this far, you can safely say in answer to my podcast's name that yes, you are listening. So thank you for listening and tuning in and listening to Alex. Thank you, Alex, for speaking to me and being so open and honest. It is quite vulnerable. So thank you for putting yourself out there with me. If you guys enjoyed it, let me know. If you didn't, let me know. Put it in the comments. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks. Bye.